Morning. Is there anyone there already? Hey guys, how's it going? Blurbar, and Stefano. How you guys doing? Hey Genaro. Cool. Alright, so seems to be working. We're officially live again. Just finalizing a couple of things here. Took me a while to get set up today. By the way, I'm kind of like a bit sick at the moment, so I might have a bit of a, I don't know, just a lack of energy today, but hopefully we'll get through this and I can show you some good stuff like I have here in the screen. I'm just gonna bring in my Epic pen so that we can get started. There we go. And let's have a look. Hey Josh, how's it going? Good to have you here. Let me show you something. I just did a quick test about what we have here. Good morning or afternoon, Mr. Manson. Mr. Manson is a regular. Mr. Sanson, sorry. Alright, I found it. Here we go. So this is a quick test, a quick render in Keyshot based on what we did last stream. So just as a matter of recap, if you didn't see the previous stream, this is basically a concept environment, or like a concept sculpt for an environment. So we did a single brush that we turned into this insert rock brush. We have a little guy here for a reference, and we have the ground, which is just a circular plane or a single-sided kind of like circle here. And I just throw this into Keyshot, brought into I just added an HDR. This one that you can see here in the background, and this is kind of like the lighting setup that I created for this work in progress. Obviously, this is not how it's gonna end up looking. I just did this as a little test to see if everything was working in terms of shapes and if there was enough contrast in in the crevices and that sort of thing. So this is what we did last stream. I mean, creating this, and the render was kind of like off camera, but I just wanted to show you, and this is what we currently have. Let's have a look. So Josh Purple, Razor Eliminator. Ashley Adams is better than you. Sure she is. Yes, she is. Thanks, Razor. Diego Sanchez, hola desde Colombia. Hola Diego. Mr. Stanson, of course I am. Illustrious Fabulous. Awesome. Alright guys, so I'm going to get started. I have a few things to show you. Really cool stuff in terms of techniques. Again, the idea with this is not just me sculpting for the sake of sculpting. It's just to show you some cool techniques, some cool stuff that you can use in your own workflow as well. Right, so let's get frame. So last time I went ahead and I did all of these smaller kind of like pieces, and I do not. Hang on a second. I have Keyshot open, so I'm just gonna close that. Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna close a few things just because I'm afraid that it's gonna, take a little bit longer. Just give me 1 second. Cool. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, it was just getting a little bit slow. So just to be sure, I closed a few things. All right. So as I mentioned in the previous stream, we went ahead and did kind of like these little. Towards the end of the stream, we did these little details. I think these ones we didn't, but so some of these smaller shapes, those are with the same brush that we created. I just went ahead and did a few more, so probably these ones actually are kind of like new. I just drag and created smaller pieces, and I did the same thing on the other side. So all of these smaller bits and pieces are something that I didn't do on the stream, but it's exactly the same process that I showed you. So I'm just gonna skip that because yeah, it's the same process, and I'm gonna show you the brush that we created. So the brush that we created. Do I have it here? I should have it. I don't have it. Let me just load it. Rocks. Here we go. So this is the brush that we had. A bunch of different rocks, but in reality it's just one single brush that we created. So you can go ahead and watch that in the previous stream. And yeah, so that's what we have. I just went ahead and selected different variants of this rock, and with the ground selected, or with the actual piece. Let me just go into this second one and go into solo mode. So you'll see this is all a single subtool. So with that one selected, I just went ahead and keep adding. I just kept adding this type of stuff. The good thing about insert mesh again is not only you have polygroups when you insert them, like so, but you also have the ability to just click and drag to insert, and then automatically create a mask. And you can just bring in the gizmo, click on this icon here to center it to the unmasked areas, and then you can just refine the placement, the scale, the rotation, everything. So this is basically what I did to complete this kind of setup. Let me just undo that. Not undo it, just fix it a little bit. There we go, and clear the mask, and that's currently what we have. Alright, so now that that is covered, let me show you what I'm planning to do with this stream. Let me clear that. So, alright, like I said, I'm a little bit sick, so I'm gonna have to pause a few times so I can get some water or something. Hang on a second. Let's bring back the chat. Cool. Alright, so what I want to do is something like that. So this is gonna be kind of like a passage thing. So this is gonna be also rock, but it's gonna have some kind of human input in it, either a design or something, and I have an idea what to do already. So that's gonna be the next step. Then I'm also going to change obviously the ground, and I'm gonna make kind of like a bit of sand, and we can just have some fun with the noise maker for this. It's going to be really simple. I already have a test to show you, but I'll walk you through the process of how I do it. And yeah, and that's basically what this stream is going to be mainly about, and we're going to focus on setting up the environment to get it ready, and basically get it ready so we can go ahead and render it and create something cool with it. Cool. All right. So for the back, or for the more kind of like feature wall or rock wall, I had this guy here that I made for the compositing guide, which is a free guide that you can just get from the ZBrush Guides website, and it just shows how to take this guy, how I created the composition of this guy. So you've probably seen it if you know already. So I'm gonna take this guy and I decimated it. So I kept some of the details, but basically following the same process that we did with the rock to create these rock brushes. So I decimated it. We had about 2 million polygons. It's still pretty high, but we're gonna keep that separate in a different subtool. So I'm gonna take this one, and I'm gonna take advantage of this head. In fact, I don't think we need the face. I was thinking of using it as a kind of like a big face, like a big rock or something, but I'm not sure that that's gonna work, or it's gonna be part of the design that I want. But I do want to keep some of these designs here. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna clip this So I'm gonna go ahead and use the select tools. So Control Shift, we can drag and maybe something like that. And there's that selection. And I'm just gonna go ahead and delete hidden. Alright, so we just have this bit. If you wanted to, you can just close this. If I were to dynamesh this and keep adding details, I will probably do that. But at this stage, doesn't make a difference. You can definitely close it if you want to, if you were doing something like that. But again, this is just a concept, and I think that one will work just fine. All right. So now that I have that, I'm just gonna go ahead and copy. I'll do it from here so you guys know what I'm doing. Copy. Then go to that one. We're probably gonna have to change the scale as well for the head, and I'm gonna paste that in here and just move it down. So this is the head. This, I think it's very tiny, you won't be able to see it. So if that happens, just bring in the gizmo and click on this center icon or center gizmo to unmask area. So there it is. I'm just gonna scale that up. There we go. So that's the head. I'm gonna turn off perspective so that we can see it a little bit better. Just gonna scale that up and rotate that maybe 90 degrees for the time being. I'll probably play around with the angle as well, but this is just another piece. And by the way, you can work on this in a separate tool like we did with the rock, and you can create a more customized and more detailed rock different from the brush, and then bring it in. Let's just check the chat. Tuatara, hey, how's it going? Afternoon. Platano 82, nice. What you making a mini map in ZBrush? I'm doing an environment sculpt for a concept. So yeah, you can just catch up with how we got to this point in the previous stream. All right, so I'm gonna take this, and what I want to do, this is something that maybe I should mention before. Let's just put this here. I don't want to put these too close to the rocks, at least not at this point. I don't think it's gonna be, great, and I'll tell you why. I prefer to keep these separate or leave a gap in here. And the reason why, so if I leave this gap in here and then I maybe take this one and duplicate it around there, the idea of leaving this gap is that once we get into keyshot or into lighting, we can get a more complex lighting, a more interesting a way to set up the lights. So if I put maybe a light source from here, let's say the sun is low and it's coming from here, right? All of this, so the light is gonna hit this wall, and this is gonna create a big shadow around here. But then this gap allows the light to come through a little bit, right? And it's just gonna hit this area with all the details and maybe bounce a tiny bit more. So if we had the point of view, this is just thinking about the concept, right? About the final image. If we have our camera situated somewhere here, kind of like in this fashion, right? And we want to focus on this area, the light is gonna help us emphasize this section here. So that's kind of like what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking ahead in terms of how am I setting this up for render later on, right? The good thing about ZBrush obviously is that we can come back and tweak and move things, move different pieces, and everything is separate into subtools. But it's good to think this, or like to think about this before you move forward. So with that said, we'll probably have to extend the floor because we'll have, let's say we'll have this view, but we want the floor to just connect these things. So let's do that before we move forward. So I'm going to select this, center it, and I'm just going to scale it up like so, and then just push it forward or backwards. Alright, so that looks better. Let's select the head or this piece. Not the head, it's not the head anymore. Let's forget about the head. It's just a piece of rock that has some kind of design in it. And I'm just gonna position this, maybe turn off perspective now, maybe scale it up a bit. I'm gonna make it very prominent, and perhaps just rotating it a bit so we can see a little bit of that. Alright, so that is what I wanted, and now I want to create that kind of like narrow passage here in the middle, and we can just do that by duplicating this. So I'm going to duplicate the same piece in here. So right now it's living in the same space. I'm just going to rotate that, and again, I don't want to make it perfectly symmetrical, so I'm probably going to just leave a gap in there, and because it has a slight, I mean, I don't mind the angle that it has, but we can just fine tune it just a little bit so that we leave a little gap so that someone like a human or something can just go through it and go into this cave or whatever it is. Select this other one. Just want to make it very narrow. That's another reason why it's good to have like this little character in the middle as a little reference, so that we can kind of see what's happening there. All right, so let's turn on perspective. Oops. Cool. I think this is working. We can afterwards we can just add more details to this, and maybe have some rocks or something that connect these two pieces together. But as a starting point for the final layer of this, I think is working fine. Let's see if there is any questions so far. Nice, looking great. Thank you. Hey Doggy, how's it going? You could do a mirror as mirror. You can what? Sorry, you could have mirror it as well. In this case, not really, because I mean I could mirror it just to have it exactly in the same position, and that's true. But I want to have this non-symmetrical form. I don't know if you can see it, but it's not exactly symmetrical, and that is one of the things. And I just think it's faster if I just rotate it than mirroring it. But if you mean like if you can mirror it and weld it, that's a different story. It's still gonna make a very symmetrical mirroring, and it's gonna increase the number of polygons or points per each one of these tools. Cool. Hey Mohammed, well done user interface. Glad you like it. Thanks guys. Alright, so I'm gonna do a quick render just to see how this is working, and I'm gonna put that theory to the test of the the more interesting lighting and see if that works. It's gonna be easier to do it in a rendering engine, but ZBrush is pretty powerful too in that sense. So I'm gonna take the lighting and I'm just gonna position that kind of like from this angle. Let's see, and do a quick render test. So we should have a that kind of thing. So this is what I'm looking for. Obviously, like I said, we're gonna have more, or I have more control over it later on. But with the lighting coming from this angle, and it's relatively low, like I said, you have this very prominent, cast shadow, and these areas of the rock in the dark areas. But then you have this other prominent area that is in the light, and then you have some interesting light pockets in this area. So that's going to create something way more interesting than if we sort of close everything together and we just rely on a light source that, if we want to really enhance or bring those details back, we have to actually create a more complex lighting, or get something that it probably looks a little bit more natural, or maybe add an extra source of light like a fire here, or something like that, just to create that atmosphere, that's something that is a little bit more interesting in terms of the lighting. So that is the only reason, with that simple trick of splitting things so that there is like gaps in between these rocks, we create this kind of like more interesting. I think it looks more appealing than just a block of darkness. Let's have a look. Are you participating coming Zero Summit? No, unfortunately this year I cannot make it there. But they already announced the speakers this time, and they're absolutely fantastic. So definitely an awesome place to be this year. Cool. So the other thing that I want to do to just quickly finish this main setup is to add kind of like the sand, and that's one of the things that I want to show you because it's pretty powerful and really easy to do. So let me bring in the test that I did. I'm going to go into solo mode. So this is my sand, and actually if I turn the other one off, you'll see that it gives a pretty decent, pretty convincing effect. I'm going to also change back the lighting to where I had it. Pretty convincing effect with all these smaller waves of sand, or like mini dunes of sand. So I'm going to show you how to do that because it's really easy, and it's just a matter of tweaking the noisemaker plugin, and then smooth it and do a little bit of clay polishing. So just a couple of steps to get this going. And I use the noise plug quite a bit to generate grounds and these type of patterns. Is really handy. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to turn this off, turn this on, go into solo mode. So this is our plane. You'll see it's very simple, nothing too complex. And what I'll do is, let's go to the surface palette. So here on the surface palette, this is where we can enable the noise. So I'm going to click noise, and this window will pop up. You can manipulate anything inside here, like rotating and everything like that, the same way that you do in ZBrush. And here's where you can increase the scale of the noise. This is kind of like a generic noise that you can add, increase the strength, play with the colors, with the curve and all that. But I'm not gonna do that, so I'm not gonna use the basic noise. I'm gonna just leave that. It doesn't matter. I'm just gonna leave it as it is. And I'm going to reduce the strength to 0. And now that I don't have anything, I'm going to bring in the noise plug. So I'm going to click noise plug and just put it on the other side. Here we go. So this noise plug allows you to create a whole bunch of different type of noises and patterns really easily, and you have a lot of control of the different variations that you can create. So just to show you how powerful this is, I'm gonna maybe select camouflage and click, make sure that this interactive update is enabled. Click OK, and you won't see anything because before we didn't have any noise plugs, so we didn't have some of these sliders available to us. But now that we have enabled this noise plug, we can just take the plugin scale, this one right here, and then scale it up and down. And I'm gonna increase the strength now. We can take the mix basic noise. So this slider is basically taking the noise plug and mixing it with the generic one. So I'm going to turn this off, so you'll see it's less noisy. But sometimes it's good. I use this sometimes when I import a custom alpha, which you can do from here, like a tallable alpha. And I also mix it with the basic noise for things like the skin pores and things like that, or just to make a more just to add surface variation to a skin, for example. That's when I use this the most. But going back to where I was saying, so now that I have the noise plug and I can play with the scale, and of course the strength, right? So that's all I need to do, so that I can see what the noise plugin is doing, right? And now I can go back and edit it. Let's bring it back. Cool. And because we have these sliders sort of enabled, we can come back and make sure that the interactive update is there, and we can see actually what all of these things are doing. So checkerboard, basically you can see what it does. Cheetah, corrugated dents. This fractional Brownian motion is actually pretty decent, pretty good, and you have a few different values here that you can change what you can tweak to change this on the fly. The one that I think it's gonna help us create that kind of like sand effect would be either let's say simplex might be a good one. You'll see it's kind of like what we need. Maybe Perlin noise might be a good one. We can try wood. It wants something more, something interesting, but I'm going to show you a different trick with this wood pattern. So let's have a look. Let's see which one works. Simple marble might be interesting, but to be honest, I think simplex. Let me just see. Maybe turbulence. Turbulence is the one that I used before, so let's just keep it simple. So in terms of the grain, you can go ahead and reduce that to 0.2 and have a look at how it looks. So this turbulence is not too bad for what I'm trying to do. We can increase the noise plug scale. Not entirely sure about this one, but we'll give it a go. Let's just edit it again. And maybe just change the octaves. That's not going to change anything on. Here's what we can. I think I want to decrease the amount of lacunarity, so that we have less of these details and more of these sharper lines. I don't know if you can notice this, but I'll try to highlight it for you. So we have these more prominent lines. So I want to have more of those than the kind of like the smaller details inside of them. That's what I'm trying to do. So maybe reduce the detail a little bit. Alright, and click OK. So now we have this. We can go ahead and keep tweaking it. Now that we have set like the basis of that noise, we can keep increasing it. Also, you have to keep in mind that this is quite a bit, quite large in terms of scale because of the human that we have. So I'm gonna keep it small, something like that. We can also play with the strength. Of course, we can invert it, we can push it forward, and we can also play with this curve. So if I click anywhere, I'm gonna create a point. So I'm gonna click here and drag it, and you'll see how it just changes this dramatically. We can also click and take it out of the curve and bring it back in the point to make it really sharp. So again, that is just by clicking it, dragging it out without letting go, and coming back. So that's how you can switch between kind of like a more Bezier curve, a soft curve, and a more sharper one. So right now you'll see the curve is, well, it's a curve. If I click and drag and bring it back in, it's more pointy. So we can use these to just generate points, and fine tune our noise. This one might be an interesting way to create a sharper edge, and once we run the next process, it's gonna look much better. So you'll see something like that, just to get these sharp edges. Okay. So once you get used to this noise plug, it's just really useful for a whole bunch of stuff. And actually, I'm going to show you another trick using the noise plugin, or then just the surface noise, to generate a really intricate geometry that is going to give it a whole new level of detail to the entire environment. So I'm going to click OK, and now we have this noise plug. So before we do anything, and that's another good thing about the surface noise, that is just a preview, so we can turn it on and off, right? And we don't need to have a lot of geometry. This is only 2,400 points, but we have this displayed in a kind of like high resolution. So I'm gonna get out of solo mode and see how the size of this, and see if the size is. Let me just check the chat. Do you think you could share your UI setup? You can go to the ZBrush Guides website and go to the resource page, and there's a UI page where I share some of my personal UIs. This current one has, like, I would say, maybe 30 to 40% custom macros and things that I've done for myself, which I could share, but it's not. You won't necessarily know what to do with those buttons because I did them for myself. So some of them make no sense, or make no sense for someone that doesn't know what they do. So I think it's not gonna help you in any way. So for example, I just recently created a whole palette just for grooming. So I have this palette with custom brushes that I'm still testing. And this is something that I was going to talk about later on, but I just mentioned it right now. I'm working on refining the brushes that I've been using for years to groom and to produce like hairstyles and fur for animals or beasts and creatures using fiber mesh in ZBrush. And I'm just taking them all, refining them, and I'm just going to create a new pack of brushes just for fiber mesh that I use often, so that I can share it with you guys. And I'll make this available again once I finish with the testing process and make sure that everything works. But that's the sort of thing that I have in my UI, so that's why I don't think I could share it, but it's not going to be any help. How come ZBrush has just 1 or 2 wood materials? Right. What is that about? I'm not sure what you mean. This is not material. That's noise. In general, the material library 2 wood. It's bad. Huh? Sorry, I'm not following. Anyway, so I think right now this noise is a little bit too big, so it's creating these dunes of sand that are a bit too big for this in terms of the scale, and that's again why it's good to have this reference here. So I'm just gonna click edit, and I'm gonna decrease the size. All right, and click OK. It's not too bad actually, and I think once we polish it a little bit more, it's gonna look better. So let's go into solo mode. Now again, this is just a preview, and we can just leave it as a noise. But what I like to do is actually apply it into the mesh, because the problem with the noise is that it works kind of like a bump map or a normal map kind of. So if I look at this from this angle, it's barely visible. So there's no distortion of the actual geometry, which is what will help us create that realism. So in order to do that, I just need to create a few more polygons or increase the resolution of this mesh, because if I just apply this, so I can click apply to mesh, you'll see it just distort that low resolution, right? That low resolution mesh. That's not what we want, obviously, so I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to divide this mesh a couple of times, so I have maybe more than that. So 2 million polygons should be okay. Let's apply the mesh, apply to mesh, and there we go. Sorry about that. So now this is actually geometry. You'll see the mesh actually displays the mesh. This plugin actually displays the mesh, and we have some geometry. We can increase this either from before we apply the noise, so we can go to edit and increase the strength to get a higher difference between the details. But an easy way to just do it after you do it is just to bring in this case at least, bring in the Gizmo and use the Y axis to exaggerate this. I don't want to do it too much. I just want to show you that it's possible. Right, so that's what we currently have with all the rest of the scene. But again, I wanted to simplify maybe the shapes a bit. So one thing I wanted those. The clay polish is probably for this. So we're just gonna click clay polish. don't know if it's doing it or not. Yeah. Maybe we have, actually we have a lot of polygons. Let's go ahead and go back one subdivision level and delete higher, because I think I just overdid it with 2 million. So I think this is better. Let's try it again. Clay polish. So higher subdivision level. Oops. And perform the clay polish in a lower subdivision level. So when you go up, it's gonna be crisper. So if I do, let's say, let's go for subdivision 3, clay polish. This one is really obvious, the effect that it has. But if I go back, you'll see it just makes all these details really, really crisp. So that's kind of like what I want. But I want to smooth everything so that it feels more like sand, like dunes of sand. So for that, I can just bring in, just to show you where you can find this. You go to deformation, and here we can play with a few things. We can polish, so we can polish here. This one is really strong, so I'll just do 5, maybe a little bit more. It's not that strong then. This slider will depend on how much resolution you have, how many points do you have. So if you have less than what I have here, just a tiny bit of this polish will polish it a lot. All right. Okay, so that's looking good. I think I want to scale it in the y-axis a bit, just to exaggerate the height of this plane. Okay, and then I'm going to run this x5, and this is one of the reasons I mentioned that this user interface is just kind of like for me. You probably won't know what this x5 means, but it's just basically a macro that runs a few of these deformations to smooth something and polish it. So it just does it in one go. So it's a macro, but you know, I don't name them specifically because I know what they are, and that's why I'm saying that this is not necessarily an interface that might help you in your own workflow. All right, so I'm gonna run the clay polish one more time, a couple more times, and I think we're getting there. I'm gonna reduce, go to a lower subdivision level, not reduce it. Okay, something like that, so you can still see a little bit of the polygons, and I'm gonna delete higher, right? Clay polish, and you see this is starting to look a little bit better. And I have a feeling that maybe if we invert it, we might have some more sharper lines. So let's just try that out. I'm gonna bring in the Gizmo, turn off perspective, and I'm gonna rotate this 180 degrees. Okay, and if you hold shift while you're rotating with the Gizmo, it will snap to integer numbers. Oops, let me just undo that. When you run the clay polish, it automatically generates a subtle mask around the edges, so you have to clear that before doing this, otherwise you get that weird thing that I just got. There we go. So you'll see, as if I invert that, I'm gonna flip the normals again. If I invert that, then the high points are gonna be sharper. So let's do a clay polish again, clear that, and okay, I think I'm happy with this. It just took a little bit of time to get to this point, but you know, once you get the hang of this process, it's way faster than what I just did. And again, you can bring in the Gizmo, you can use the y-axis to increase this a little bit. The difference in the details. Let's get out of solo, and we can look at how a bit slow. So what I'm going to do, just so we can work a little bit faster, is, I mean, now I can see that this is working and it's having a good, you know, it's working well with the rest of the assets. If anything, we can just reduce the size a little bit more, but I think it's working well. I just want to flatten some areas so that I can suggest that people walk through it and that sort of stuff. I will get to that in a second. But in order to work a little bit faster, what I'll do is I'm going to hide a few things. Maybe not that one. I'm just going to hide these things, and we can work on integrating the plane with these rocks, and then we do that on the other side, and then on the two kind of like heads or main rocks at the back. So let me see if there is any questions so far, and I'm happy to answer those. Hey Sandros, how you doing? Hey Alex, great explanations. Thank you. Glad you find it useful. Mr. Sanson, which character are you planning to insert in the scene? I don't think I'm gonna have any feature character. It's more about the environment. We can have if anything, we can just do something like I have here. Just pose it like really horrible, just quick pose to get something interesting, and then when we do the render, we get the shadows and the different values, and then you can just paint over or whatever else you want to do. This is just a concept environment anyway. All right, I'm gonna turn off this guy reference as well, and with that in mind, so we have 37,000 polygons. I'm probably gonna subdivide this one more time, so we have more polygons to work with, and I'm gonna bring in a custom brush, but you can do the same thing that I'm gonna do with clay buildup, and then just smoothing it, and basically all the brushes that I have in my packs or the custom brushes that I make are just things to speed up the workflow significantly, but you can still do the same things if you use the standard brushes in ZBrush. So I'm gonna use the custom one just so that we can speed up and I don't spend too much time doing the manual sculpting, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So if I go to brushes, I have a pack here called the rock pack, and there's one called ground. Let's see which one we can use for this. The cliff builder might be interesting for some sediments or some connections with the rock. I'm just thinking which one would be a good one. But you can get it just works, helps me to work faster. That's the only reason I use this. So just with the plane selected, I'm gonna start clicking and dragging just to sort of like make sure that the sand kind of like integrates and builds up below these rocks. Probably we need more resolution, so divide more. So that's what I'm trying to do with this brush, and also holding shift to smooth some of these areas. I'm gonna actually reduce the intensity of the smooth brush. So you'll see the details that this brush is generating are things that you can do with a clay brush, probably the damp standard brush, smoothing things out, but it just saves some time and it creates a bunch of extra details almost for free in a way. So I'm just applying a little bit of pressure and also smoothing as I go so that it's not super harsh, and I just want to create that there's kind of like sand that builds up, especially builds these areas of the rock. It's been here for a long time, and as you design, and I think that's really important. All right, I think we're good on this side. Let's see if I can show you a bit of the difference between how this might look. It's getting a little bit laggy. Right, so I'm gonna take a snapshot of that, and I'm gonna invert or just change to the other rock, and I'm just gonna rotate that around. Hopefully there's a little bit of difference between the one and the one at the bottom. So the one at the top looks more integrated, I think, and that's the whole point of that sculpting pass, just so that we can see more of that integration. So all of this makes it look more, you know, that there is some weight there's some gravity, there's some weight, there's some, you know, passage of time, and it's not just, you know, a flat piece of insert brush on the sand. The fact that the plane that we did has like some wavy patterns, it helps. So it's not very obvious. But if we do manually create these type of details, it really helps to sell that idea. So at this point, it's all about the subtleties, really, because we have established. Let me just clear that. We have established some of the main shapes, the primary shapes, and some of the secondary with the little rocks that we created. So we can go ahead and do the same thing for this area. Again, using the same brush that I'm using the strong layered cliff maker. In fact, I can show you something else, as in we can work on something different with a different brush that I also quite like, which is this, not the gravity one. There's one called Discovery Rock. This one might be too strong for this, but it allows you to discover, in a way, rocky patterns. So it has an interesting alpha, and the settings of this brush are kind of like good to randomize patterns, but it's a bit subtle for this. Let's stick with what we have. I think it was good. Oh no, I think I might have crashed ZBrush. No. Okay. No. Alright, cool. Now, I think ZBrush is not gonna crash, but again, for some reason the tablet is gone. That's really annoying. Let's see if I can. Alright, I'm gonna try to do it with the mouse, but it's not gonna be as good, obviously. So I'm using a simple rock builder. I'm just gonna do this pass, show you a couple more things, and if anything, we'll have to restart here. Unfortunately, I don't know why this happens, but every now and again, only when I'm streaming, it doesn't have to do. I don't think it does anything with ZBrush. It's just when I'm streaming, for some reason, the tablet stop working, and then I have to restart, which is really annoying. Anyway, I think this simple rock builder is actually more in line to what I was hoping to get, like a more exaggerated build-up. So I'm just using my mouse. So if you don't have a tablet, maybe this is the lesson for you. I might be able to show you how to work with just a mouse. Let's just do that. Why not? Let's embrace the challenges. So the rest of the stream is not gonna be. I'm not gonna use a tablet. I'm just gonna use a mouse, unless you guys tell me that the clicking is annoying and that you can hear it, because that is annoying. But if not, we'll just embrace the limitations and and work without the mouse. Sorry, without the tablet. All right. So I think this brush is actually quite good to generate these variations in height. I'm gonna do a quick pass on smoothing it. And again, because I quite like the shapes that this is giving me on this side, I'm gonna go ahead and repeat it on the other side. So let's turn on the other one. And let's just add this. Mr. Sanson, I thought you were using, I am using a Cintiq, but what I meant about the tablet is the tablet drivers. I don't know, they stopped working. So I don't know. And to tell you the truth, it only happens when I'm streaming, or sometimes happens when I'm recording tutorials actually. So it might have to do with the recording software, but it's a pretty decent one. I don't know why that is, but it doesn't matter. This one is giving me like really nice kind of like embedding around here, which is pretty cool. And that has to do with the brush. So this brush also has respects the depth of other underlying surface, so that's pretty good. So I'm happy with this. Just do a quick smoothing of that. All right, and now let's go ahead and do the same for the more featured like rocks. So for these areas, we can do the same thing. Just a quick pass here with this to increase that depth. Let me know if seriously if the clicking of the mouse, because I can hear it and it's annoying. So if you can hear the mouse, I'll try to do something to fix the tablet, and we'll leave the challenge for for another day, basically. Another thing that you can do here at this point, if you want to just exaggerate and do more specific kind of like build up of these sand dunes, is use the move brush. So I'm going to bring in the move brush just to show you, and I'm going to make sure I have AccuCurve enabled, just so that it's more pointy, and just simply push these things up. So I'm going to try to do it closer to, for example, in this area that you have this crevice or this crack on this rock, on this feature rock. I would assume that there is more buildup in there, because and this is just an assumption based on what I've seen in references, that if there is a crevice and there is like wind blowing the sound into it, when there is buildup into that crevice, and when it falls down because of the gravity, it's just going to build up more in that crevice or in that area than in other parts. So if you want to just little things like that, it helps with make things more believable. So another one here, for example, I can just push things like that, maybe reduce the size, and maybe do it more here in the inside. Alright, so hopefully you see what I mean with the integration of this. I'm gonna do a quick smoothing of this. I can hear the mouse clicking. You cannot. Brilliant. So doesn't really matter. So let's just embrace that. We won't have any pressure because, again, I'm not using the tablet, but we'll use the mouse. Excellent. One thing I want to do is, if you look at this from this point, there's kind of like no horizon, and we could block it with some more rock, or we can just push and pull some of these areas. So do something like this, just a little bit, so that it's easy to create some kind of horizon later on. Alright, I'm going to use the same technique of using the move brush to leave some of these areas. So let's some of the areas with the other rocks. This is how this one is looking. So I think I exaggerated too much. I cannot smooth this point in here because there's no connection, there's less connections than other points. So I have to change my smooth brush a little bit, just for this, in this case, so that we have less connected points. Alright. Yep, so I'm just gonna use this brush, the move brush, to lift some areas here. Okay, and I think that's enough for one side. Let's do the other one, and then we move on with the really cool tip that I'm gonna give you. The really cool technique to create more intricate details and kind of like the feature piece, or one of the feature piece of this environment. Okay. All right. So if I go into solo mode, you see this is how rough this looks now, right? This kind of you know, we started with a good we started with a good starting point, if that makes sense, with the noise maker, and then just with a manual work and the custom brushes that I use, we generated this. You'll see that these lines are very well defined, and that is, like I said, because of the brushes, they respect the other geometry, so it helps to kind of like embed those rocks into the sand. That's another reason why, again, you can use standard brushes and clay builder brushes and using masking to do the same thing. The brushes that I have, they just speed up the workflow. That's all they do. They're not super special or anything. It just helps to create this a little bit faster, so you can concentrate on something else. All right, let's bring back everything together so that we can see how everything is looking. And I think it's looking pretty decent. So this might be an interesting opportunity to work with a vertical layout, maybe, or a composition that is vertical. We'll see. That's something that we can decide definitely later on. Let's have a look at any questions. I thought you have a dig. Yeah, I can hear you. Mr. Sansov not flaring or something. This is actually a question. How can you make simple projects look cool? For my own education, I'm asking. So I'm not sure what you mean exactly, but any project is simple. That's how I see it. And the way that you make it cool or not, it's just, sometimes it's a gamble, but sometimes it's a gamble in terms of if what you're doing is going to appeal to someone else. So what I'm doing here might look cool to you, or to someone else, but someone else might say, "Oh, this is just a bunch of insert meshes, nothing special." So if you want to make like simple projects, and what I mean simple is like quick and simple things like this look cool, I would argue that the best thing to do is to study forms and to study how things behave in the real world. So all those little tips and tricks that I'm giving you in terms of workflow and technique, they help you construct or build things that you want. But the little extra tips that I give you in terms of how to make, like for example, the sand that builds up into the crevices, or how to blend things one with another, those are things that comes from experience and from like learning how certain things work. So the more projects that you work that are similar to these, the more things you're gonna learn if you spend time learning it and learning the little very particular things of that environment or that surface, or if it is anatomy, those things. And it's just something that happens over time, and you will collect all that information, and at some point it just comes as second nature to think about those things, and it's just something that will happen as you mature as an artist, I think, just to build up that library of little bits and pieces of knowledge that you can drop into your creations, whether they're simple or not. But at the end, every project is simple because it's just a matter of a series of steps. How complex you might think something is, I think it depends on how much study or how much research you have to apply to it in order to get it to a point that you're happy with, and how many steps you need to go through to get to that point. But once you do it, and once you do it a few times, it just becomes it just becomes a simple project. So I don't know if that answers your question, or maybe I just went on a tangent like I always do, but hopefully that gives you an idea. Not sure. Hey, execute effects. Nice work, Pablo. Thank you. I was wondering, how did you insert those details inside the rocks? If it is the curved tubes, I think you're referring to the main one, to the rocks at the back. Execute effects. If so, I just manually added them. I can show you really quickly how you can achieve that after I show you I'll show you guys okay, so yes. So I'll show you that later on as a separate tool, but I want to show you the next step and see if we can do something interesting with it. Alright, so I'm gonna scroll out a bit. Let's do a quick save, just in case, since we don't have any tablet. I don't want to run into something else. Alright, let's have a look. So the next thing I want to do is create some kind of, I'm actually going to get rid of the Epic Pen as well. Cool. So because I cannot draw in the screen anyway. So what I'm thinking of doing now is create, maybe on this side or maybe on this side, I don't know, a kind of like more ancient structure, like a circular motion, just to go with these, curvy lines or these organic shapes here. Something similar, but on the ground, so that it's kind of covered by the sand. Again, just to add that sense of like these are like kind of ruins that they've been there for centuries, and the passage of time maybe just cover them and things like that, and underneath there is a whole new world or something. So this is kind of like the things that I like to do when I'm designing stuff like that. Just think about the story, and that just thinking about the story helps me inform the artistic decisions that I make, if you want to call them like that. Alright, so this is a pretty cool tip. It's very easy to do. I did a test before of something kind of like what I want to create. So this is pretty messy, but you get the idea. It's something that could work really nicely, and we can just have these circular bits and pieces embedded into the sand. So I'm going to show you how to create that really quickly, because it's actually very simple. It's a very simple process to get to that level of detail once you know the steps. Let's see. I need to select a 3D sphere. We can do it on a sphere. Yeah, probably a sphere is good. So let's just make it a polymesh 3D. And I'm going to convert that into a Dynamesh object. That's probably maybe a little bit more resolution than that. So 300 points, that should be okay. Alright, so this has to do with the noisemaker and some of the you can create your own noisemaker. You can you can create your own surface noise with the noisemaker. You can also import a tileable alpha that has like specific pattern that you wanna create. So this is, for example, something that I do with the clothes and drapery course, and that's something that it's really handy to fine tune and refine the details of clothes in ZBrush. So I just have a series of custom alphas tileable. Maybe I'll just show you if I can have them here. Oh no, there it is. Sorry, an unrecoverable error has been occurred. Alright, so give me 1 second. We have a few problems today, but it's alright. I'm just gonna recover it. In the meantime, you can see my Roger Waters from Pink Floyd caricature there in the background as I restart ZBrush. I'm just wondering if no, I don't have tablet. But anyway, the next step that I'm going to show you, and the next things that we're going to do, they don't really require any. See, there we go. This is the problem. The tablet. There's no tablet available. I think we can reset it, but I just don't want to stop the stream. Let's see. Oh no. Let's have a look. Maybe we can recover the project. Oh yeah. Don't worry guys, we didn't lose much. So we have the project. I'm just gonna do a quick save. Cool. Is 100 million polygons bad? No, I don't think so. Now I lost what I was doing. Here. Is this the one? Yep. Alright. So we have this dynamic sphere. So like I was saying, you can have your own custom alphas, and I'm just going to show you an example of that. So in alphas, I have a series of fabric patterns. So this is something that I built over time, and all of these ones are tileable, or most of them. I think all of them. Yeah, I think all of them are tileable. And this is part of like the bonus material that you get with the clothes and drapery course. You might have seen it or not. It's on the ZBrush website, ZBrush Guides website, if you want to have a look at. But in a similar way, you can use things like that with a rock pattern, or maybe sand or anything like that, to create a more interesting pattern and put it into the noise maker. So with that said, you can also use the presets that come with the noise maker. So you can click here in the lightbox noise makers, and it just brings up this noise folder, and these are a bunch of different really cool noise maker patterns that you can create yourself, but they already come with ZBrush, and this is what I'm going to use to create that kind of like more intricate mesh. So I think the one that I used was this noise, the wood one, but I don't know, we can create something else. We can try this one. Nah, this one is not good. I mean, it's good, but it's not great for what I want. By the way, just to load them, all you have to do is double click the noise, and it's going to load. This one is kind of interesting. So this one is something that could work as a skin for a reptile or something. I'm going to go for something simpler. Let's just stick with the simple one. So there we go. This is the noise maker of wood. So we have a wood one, which is pretty good. And again, the good thing about this noise maker, or the noise maker plugin, is that you don't have to have UVs to have a noise that sort of wraps around in a nice way like this one. And of course you can just click edit and fine tune it, but I'm not too fussed. I think this looks good. Let's just do a quick edit, see what else we can do. We can just decrease the scale, maybe increase it. I'm quite happy with how this looks for the type of object that I'm going to create. Yeah, I think I'm happy with this. So here's the trick. Once you, or not a trick, but like the next step of the workflow. Once you choose your noise maker, or the pattern that you want to apply to it, you can simply go ahead and bring this noise maker plugin to fine tune it. You can also play around with the curve just to make it more intense, all that good stuff, like that, for example. And we can use the offset, and this is kind of like the next step. use this offset. I don't use this offset match. Well, I use it for this type of things, but I don't use it much if it is not to create this process that I'm going to show you. So you can take this offset and just move it, and you'll see this red line appears, and it's kind of like clipping. It's clipping the noise based on the curve that you create. So I can take this and just play around with this offset, and you'll see the kind of like transparent areas. So just by doing that, it creates a more complex set of lines or a pattern, and it's all interactive. So you can just fine tune it here, maybe just increase the gaps a little bit. You can go ahead and say, you know, it's quite big, so you can reduce it or increase it. And like I said, it's all interactive to a degree. Change the strain, mix it up with the noise to randomize it. You can still move the points in the curve like so, and then once you're happy, just click OK, and this is the noise applied to this mesh, right? You can turn double on so you can see behind, right? And again, this is really helpful because this is still a noise maker. So if you render this out, just gonna do a quick BPR. ZBrush should actually take into account, well, it did it. It takes into account the noise maker. So anything that we change with the offset is actually going to be transparent, and you can create very complex objects just like that. Now, in order to make this into usable, intricate geometry, we need to do something different. So if I just click on apply to mesh, ZBrush is just going to apply the noise maker to the mesh, right? Because otherwise, I mean, we're not doing anything different. We're just simply taking what we had and applying it to the mesh. But ZBrush has no idea that we want to keep these transparent areas as gaps into the mesh, because this is just applying the noise maker. And anything that is transparent in this case, ZBrush is ignoring it. It's like, well, you don't want to apply any noise maker in this area, so let's just ignore it. And that's what happens. But if you have the noise maker enabled without applying it, you can go to the geometry palette, and this is a really nice trick I learned from Mr. Joseph Drost. And you can go to let's have a look, the Dynamesh subpalette, right? And in the Dynamesh subpalette, you have these extra buttons, for example, create shell and these type of things. This is something that you could use for hollowing a mesh that you're gonna take into 3D printing and so on and so forth. But I'm gonna use the sub. So if you press the Alt key to access the alternative or a variation of the algorithm for this subtraction, it's just gonna create kind of like a union between, or a subtraction union between the noise maker that is visible and the mesh that you have in here. So hopefully that makes sense, but if it doesn't, it will make sense when I do it. So if I hold the Alt key and click on sub, let's just give it a second. ZBrush needs to calculate a few things, and hopefully it won't crash because there we go. So ZBrush is kind of like calculating the subtraction of the noise into the Dynamesh sphere. So now this is actual geometry. It's not great geometry, but you know, you can clean it up and make it more interesting. To be honest, I don't need it to be that clean, but you can just run, for example, a clay polish, you know, to clear some of the shapes. You can inflate it. You can run another Dynamesh. Probably if I run a Dynamesh right now, there are some very thin areas at the moment that is going to create a bunch of gaps. So let's try that out. Just re-dynameshing it. Well, it's not too bad, but I prefer to keep it simple. So you'll see this is a rather complex geometry object that we can use to create that other pattern that we're gonna add to the environment. So what I want to do is also scale this down. And that makes it even more complex, I think, in the way that it looks. And with that out of the way, we can simply, let's see, Well, this one has 4 million polygons, so we can definitely simplify it a bit. So you can take this and run the decimation master. And this is the same process that I showed you last stream for the rocks. So in a way, we're just creating kind of like another asset. So decimation master has these really cool presets. You can run the preprocess current and then choose a specific percentage and then decimate, but that is like 1, 2, 3 steps. Whereas the presets, just click and wait until ZBrush does it. So I'm gonna go to 250K and wait until ZBrush analyzes this very complex mesh that is a bit, it's a bit complex. Analyze that and then reorder the polygons to give me way less geometry, but trying to keep all the details. So this might take a little bit of time. I was doing it rather quick. So let's just wait for that. And in the meantime, if you have any questions about this process, I'm happy to also answer those. Simple mean, if I did it, I bet you must some parts and then inflate it inside and then added curved tubes inside. I think okay, you're talking about the details. I did use inflate. I didn't use the curved tubes. I'm gonna show you what I did because it's simple. That doesn't take too long. It's just, I mean, the process is simple. It just takes some patience to do it manually because that's what I did. Mr. Sanson, no offense, no taken. Hey Adrian. Hola Pablo, the fantastic, yes, great, thank you so much. Thanks for your great ZBrush. No worries, man. Glad you find it useful. Alright, so this is gonna take a few more seconds. Let's grab some water. So when this one is finished, what I'll do is copy this subtool the same way that we've done it. Right now it's sort of rearranging it and put it into the sand. And I think that's almost completing the main setup of the stream. I'm going to show you something else that it could help, and that's just using again some custom brushes, but you can create your own, and you can use the nanotile texture. The nanotile plugin, which is very useful to create tileable textures inside ZBrush, especially when you want to use something complex like an insert mesh. So you can do something like that. I've already done it, and I have it into a few brushes that we can add more details to it. So let me just finish with this process. It's taking longer than what I thought, and hopefully it's not gonna look too messy, because this process might destroy some of the little bits and pieces that are too thin. I mean, I should probably done this with a little bit more care. This is a bit rough, but yeah, I'll show you how I created the other stuff, the indentations in the rocks, in the main rocks. This is taking longer than what I thought it was gonna take. But to be fair, it's an intense process. Alright, I'm gonna leave this here, gonna get some water, and then I'll come back in a second. Alright, I'm back, and this thing is still going, so I think I'm gonna just stop it. Stop it and do it again with a bit more of a simpler noise, and hopefully it's not it's not gonna crash. So let's scale aboard that. We still have that. So I'm gonna repeat the process for those who missed it. All right. So this time I'm gonna do less resolution in the Dynamesh, and I'm gonna choose a different noise maker, something or a preset that is different, something a little bit more subtle for ZBrush. Let's try it. Which one do you reckon? Which one do you think would be good? You know what, this one is almost ready to go. Let's use that one. Yep, I think this one will work just fine. It doesn't have that kind of like centric, like this pattern that I was going for, but we can definitely do something about it. I'm just thinking about what to do, but I think we can do something about it. So let's go ahead and do the same process. Hold the Alt key, click in the sub button just to generate this very intricate pattern, which is pretty cool. And let's do a clay polish as well, just to simplify it a bit. And actually, before I do that, I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna inflate a tiny bit so that we don't have those horrible little bits and pieces floating about. Do a clay polish now, clear it, and also if we do a quick auto groups, that allows us to there's nothing we can get rid of, so never mind. And then control click and drag to redynamesh. That's fine. There's some gaps in here, so might as well close holes. Redynamesh again. There's some very thin parts, give us a problem, but this is definitely a simpler geometry. Let's see what happens if we just squish it like that. Nah, that's not gonna look good. Let's undo all that. I think I want what I had. That's the thing. Once I find something that I like, it's hard to go back. So let's use that. We just do it a little bit more thoroughly than what we did before. So I'm just going to increase the size of the plugin. You can also use these Z angles to change the angles a little bit, or reposition just play with the placement basically of the noise. Alright, and then use the offset to generate that transparency. And also, I think I want to get rid of not too much, the basic noise mix. Alright, click OK. Go double. Let's see what this gives us. So Alt sub. Alright, so this one is much better. See, it's a bit cleaner. We can go ahead and inflate this. Also, I'm gonna do an auto groups, and I think I'm gonna get rid of that one. Just holding Control Shift click on that area. In fact, there are some like floating polygons. I don't know if you guys can see it. So I'm just gonna select the ones that I want to keep, which are all of these ones, the main bits. Invert that, and now I can just delete hidden. And with that, right, we can increase the dynamic resolution a tiny bit and run the process again, and that is much more decent. There's still some, you know, borders that we can clean up, but I think it looks good. Now we can just start rotating this around so that when we compress it, it kind of looks cool. Okay, so to reset the pivot, I'm just gonna hold the Alt key, and you'll see that unlocks the pivot. You can also click here and then just click on the rotation. I'm more used to just pressing Alt to. It's like a quick shortcut for that. And we can scale this like that and generate this pattern. Or if you don't want to squish it, you can also use the booleans. So let's just try booleans, because why not? Why not? So I'm gonna go ahead and append just a cube. Right, and I'm gonna turn on the subtraction icon here. And in order to see what I'm doing, I'm gonna turn on live boolean, and you'll see the cube is already sort of cutting through. And just with the gizmo and the cube selected, just gonna scale it and then just push it down, and you'll see that cuts through this shape. And I think that's quite interesting. So let's just find a good angle. Yep, I think that's cool. So let's see if we can, if it's gonna work. I believe it's gonna be an issue, and that is because of the little bits and pieces of thin polygons. So this might not work, but we'll give it a go. So if we make boolean mesh, oh great, he did it. So sometimes if you see some of these particles and they're like some thin meshes, it might just give you a problem, but in this case it worked. So there it is. It's a boolean mesh, and we just sort of cut through it. What's great about this thing is that you can add another noise maker just to make it more complex on top of this one. So if you take this noise, let's say, let's just add something else like that one. Right, so it becomes really complex with a couple of just a sphere with a couple of processes with the noise maker, and you can just keep using the offset and keep destroying the piece and create something very, very cool. But I think this works. If I apply it to the mesh, let's see what happens. It just pushes it too much. So I'm gonna leave this noise on just as a noise. And if we were to render this in Keyshot, that's another good thing with the ZBrush to Keyshot bridge. Keyshot is going to use displacement and bumps to reproduce this noise maker, so we don't have to actually apply it, which is great. Alright, so I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go to to our environment, the environment tool, and I'm going to paste it, push it down, and again it's quite tiny. I think the scale of the entire environment is quite big, so which is not too bad. I'm just gonna scale my little piece of geometry, and of course the noise maker came with it. I'm gonna go into solo mode as well, and that's why we see all these gaps. That's not dynamic or anything, that's just the noise maker. So I'm gonna turn it off for the time being, and we'll come back to that. And I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. Right, and let's see what a clay polish does for this. Alright, so a clay polish kind of like gives it a little bit more bumpiness on that sort of flat area that we created with the subtraction. And now, from the top, what I'll do is I'll bring everything, and I'm just going to try to position this in an interesting place. So let's try it there, and then just push it down or scale it down. So I want this to be kind of like part of the rocks in a way, maybe larger than that, so that it's definitely more prominent than a human size. And it's going to be quite embedded into the sand. So that's why I didn't want to have it, you know, too obvious. In a way, it works kind of like a stairs or something, like steps. But again, this is just to add another another level of complexity to the environment. Remember, the guy is just a reference; is not going to be there. But the fact that we have these in separate subtools, it allows you to do this type of thing. Just push things up and down, and find the right place for it. All right. So what I'll do with this again, I'm gonna turn everything off except what I need, which in this case is just that. So I have the side, these rocks, the plane as the ground, and this design. So I'm gonna select the ground and go back to the brush that I used. Oh, it crashed, didn't it? So I have to go ahead and load that again. And oops, not that one. So I think the one that we were using is the one that I liked afterwards. It's the rock builder, which I think that's the one that we were using. Let's try that one. Yeah, this one will work. Alright, so I'm gonna do the same thing, and also using the Alt key, I'm just also going to push in some areas. And again, this will be way faster and easier with the Cintiq, but we don't have a tablet driver right now. But again, because this is a brush that has depth, or that it respects depth, it's creating, if I go into solo mode, you'll see it's creating these little gaps where the new pattern is. So if I do it very obvious, you'll see it's respecting that area, so it looks kind of like embedded into it, and that's another reason I like to use this specific brush. So just normal sculpting by hand, holding Alt in certain places just to push that in. In some areas I want to actually cover it with sand. Some nice build up of sand here. Alright, I think that creates a nice pattern. I think it works well. It has some nice details, maybe more here. It's good to work from different angles as well, especially when you sort of combining things or working on transitions. It's important to see it from different angles, and that also is going to help you, or is going to give you the ability to look at this from different angles and find the render that really works, or the composition that really works. And there's a bunch of geometry here that we don't use, or that we won't be able to see. So later on, if you wanted to, you can also use live booleans to simply code that, and and save some polygons if you wanted to. I'm not bothered. I think we have a total point count of 3 million, so that's nothing for ZBrush to handle. So I'm just happy with this. Let's go ahead and turn everything back on. And I think we're getting to a place that I'm happy with this environment. Let's do a quick render again to see how everything is working, and then I'm going to show you that the technique that I use to create these more feature-like patterns of the rocks. So before I do the render, actually, let's move the light. I'm going to switch to a basic material so that we can see the light moving. And let's do a render there. And let's see if you guys have any questions. I'm happy to answer. Oh, thanks, Ian. Thank you, Nova Bjorn. Glad you like it. All right, so again, this is working quite nicely. there might be an opportunity here to sort of create another. It could be a simple plane or a block of just a cube in this area, just to help block out the light coming through, so that this is not entirely in the light. And that's something that we can do in Keyshot, just create a simple geometry to block it out. And so I'll do that later on. But in terms of the ZBrush work, I think we are pretty close to something, that we can use as a base mesh to create a concept. And it didn't take too long. I mean, it did take long 2 streams, just because I'm showing you the different processes. But once you learn the steps, it really doesn't take that long, and you can create a variety of these type of scenarios. I'm gonna show you something cool, which you can do yourself with VDMs or vector displacement maps. I have a few brushes as well that are part of that rock brushes pack, that it's already ready to go, but it is very easy to create something like that. So I'm just gonna show you that, because I believe I think I'm gonna create that for the background, or like the background of this cave. So I'm gonna create a cave with a single click, which is pretty cool. And I'm just gonna show you what I mean by that in just a second. I'm gonna reset my light. And actually, before I do that, we have about 15 minutes. So I'm gonna show you real quick, like I promised, how I did these details in a different brush. I'm gonna do a quick save. Not in a different brush, what did I say? In a different tool. So I'm gonna use this. So let me just do a quick setup here for showing you. Alright, so let's imagine that this thing is actually the head of that character that I did. Oops. So let's assume that that's the head, and then I'm going to show you how I created those details. It's going to be a little bit hard, because again, I don't have the tablet or the driver of the tablet, so I'm just doing it by mouse. But ultimately, you could do the same thing with the mouse. It's just more complicated. The tablet is not gonna, or the Cintiq is not gonna make you a better artist. It's just another tool that definitely helps, but I'm sure we can do it. Alright, so the process is very simple. First, I create the gaps, or the patterns. Then once I had the patterns, I created the extra pattern that goes inside the pattern. So it's kind of like 2 steps. So the first step is creating the big pattern, kind of like the secondary shapes or the primary shapes of the details, if that makes sense, in this shape. So to do that, I did the following. I'm going to select a layer brush. So I'm going to click layer, and again, this is really simple. Just you can press Alt to dig in. Maybe I'm going to increase the Dynamesh resolution a little bit, so you can see more of it. So again, holding Alt just pushes geometry in. Normal effect just pushes things out. So we can play around with a couple of things. We can play with the focal shift a little bit, so it's not as harsh, that transition between the border and the center, and the intensity as well, so that it adds more or subtracts more, gives more gap, like that. So that's one thing. The other thing is we can increase or enable lazy mouse. For you guys, should be here on the stroke palette, lazy mouse. So you can just click on lazy mouse and also increase the lazy radius here. So I have this in my custom UI, and that allows you to have more control over the shapes. So let's increase that even more, just because if you have a pen, it's probably enough with 30, a value of 30 or something like that, but because I have the mouse, this should help. Alright, so that's the initial setup of the brush. That's all I'm going to do now. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to give this entire mesh a white color, or a slightly darker gray color. So for that, I'm just going to fill object a few times. right? So this is a gray color. I'm going to select another, maybe a red color, and enable RGB, and then just paint, and also make sure that RGB is set to 100. Right. So I'm now painting with details. So sorry, I'm adding details in terms of depth. You'll see there's depth there, and I'm also painting. So I just wanted to show you that that's what I'm going to be doing, but it's not going to be that strong. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to select slightly. Let's just go for a dark color, almost like a black color. The problem is that let's just go for a red color, or I don't know. When I was doing it, I had already poly paint, so I'm just trying to find something to show you guys. I think green will work. This is just fine. All right. So the reason I want to select a color to do this next step is so that I can, in a way, save or recreate the mask later on. You might not need it, but it's always good to have it. All right. So first step is to set up the layer brush so that it works the way that you want it to. I exaggerated the lazy radius because I'm using a mouse right now. Enable RGB and paint the entire object with white or another color, and then select a different color that has a lot of contrast to create the details. So now this is what we're doing. All right. The next step is to save a morph target. So I have it here in my user interface. For you guys, should be at the bottom. Let's have a look. This is the problem with once you have your custom UI, it's hard to here it is, morph target. It's hard to know where things are. So here's the morph target. I'm going to click store morph target, and ZBrush, what ZBrush is going to do is kind of like saves or hold a version of the current mesh, so we can go back to this particular shape in a way, in a more controlled way. All right. So once I have that, I'm just going to hold the Alt key. Maybe reduce my brush size, and I'm just going to simply start creating a pattern. Oops. By the way, if you hold Alt, so by default this is the color that we selected, but if you hold Alt, you're also switching to the alternative color. So I'm just going to select a green color as well for the Alt version. So now I'm going to go like this. And the reason I save the morph target as well is that by saving a morph target with the layer brush, is going to maintain the same level of depth. So I can just go over this, and you'll see it has the same depth as well, right? So this is the real trick, really, that you can just start from the same the same area. And I'm just going to make a simple pattern here with not too much effort, just to show you what I did there. Oops. All right. In fact, we can just increase the size of the brush and just go over the same area, just to make it a little bit stronger. Right. And it looks awful, but it's a good opportunity to show you how to fix it, because that's the whole point we created the morph target. So the current, like the version of the rocks that I have in the environment, it looks a little bit sharper than this, and obviously more thoroughly created the pattern. But let's say that you want to fix this, and maybe just cut these areas or make these rounded ends of the stroke sharper. For one, you can create a custom alpha that allows you to have a sharper edge, or just select one of the the alphas like alpha 28, and that will give you a sharper result. But because we have the morph target, we can go ahead and bring in the brush palette, and filter by M, and here we have the morph target. Right now, the morph target is the brush that allows you to bring back whatever detail you had, or whatever shape you store in the morph target. So it's basically, if you see this morph target here, I can switch between what we had and this new one. And the reason I keep the poly paint is because whether or not we use the morph target, the poly paint is there. So we can remove the morph target, but we still have the poly paint if we want to use it as a mask. So anyway, this is the two states that we have. We have this with the indentations, and we have the original. And the morph brush allows you to go back to the original. So I can do a quick modification to the morph brush. So one thing is we can decrease the focal shift so it's sharper. And if you wanted to, you can also add a mask. Oh, sorry, an alpha to this brush. So now I'm just gonna, oops, make sure I turn off RGB this time. I don't wanna. Oh, actually, let's turn RGB and use the same color of the base for both. So now we're actually painting and fixing the mask. Right. So with that, I'm just gonna use the morph brush to go back to what I had, and that helps me to sort of erase those details. Let's say I wanna erase some of these, like so, and just create a little gap in here. Again, I'm doing this very roughly, but you get the idea, hopefully. So that's kind of like how I went about creating that first stage, or like the first step of those details, and generating those gaps. And again, this is just the morph brush, and it's really handy to create these type of breaks in a way. Right, so I'm gonna leave it like that, just to, I think that gives you an idea of what I did in terms of the process. Of course, this looks awful, but I think it paints the picture. All right, now I can go ahead and delete the morph target or leave it there. It doesn't really matter at this point. But I'm going to show you how to use the polypin. We have about 10 minutes, so if you guys have any questions about this, I'll try to answer them before we finish up. But the reason I have the color is that if we for some reason delete the morph target, right, we can very easily, or hopefully hopefully very easily, we can mask by hue or intensity. So and just be able to mask out only the areas that we painted and that we have those details, and we can apply, I don't know, a noisemaker or something like that. So if we go to the masking palette and go to mask by color, we have three options here: mask by intensity, mask by hue, and mask by saturation. So because the color of the entire object is kind of like white or desaturated, and the details are very bright green, masking by saturation might work. Otherwise, hue is always good in this case. And if you had a black and white image, intensity is probably the best one. So mask by saturation, that's it. Basically mask whatever is desaturated in this case, and we can invert that mask, right, and have only these sections masked, inverted. I'm gonna turn off polypaint right now, because that's obviously, it's kind of like a working polypaint. It's not the final one, or it's not the color. And we can go ahead and do something like we've been doing this stream with the surface noise, and just apply some noise, right? So now we have some noise in this area, and we can apply it, clear the mask, and there we go. So that's one way to go about it. The extra details that I did was the same way. So the next step would be to manually place kind of like the lines inside. So I just masked out. So I had this mask, and I went with a custom brush that I have with a small size of a brush, and I just did this manually to create those extra details. But because I had everything masked, it didn't matter. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how I approached that. So let's go back to our environment, and I think we are ready. Oh, not ready. Well, almost ready. I just want to show you what I would do here for the background, just to have something quick that allows you to, play around more with the lighting, and maybe put some kind of like light, sci-fi light in the distance or something. So let's see. What's your link to your channel? My link to my channel is Pablanda. So if you see below here in my little camera thing, this ArtStation, Facebook, Twitter, all of that. So just use this one, Pablanda. It's the same for all of them. I haven't gone into my personal Twitch channel for a while, just because, I think in terms of the people that I can reach with ZBrush lives, it's a more target audience that I can help. Whereas with my personal in Twitch, you know, there might be people that are not really interested in what I have to show. So I think this is a better way to do it. All right, so I'm going to show you the other technique that I mentioned with VDMs, just to wrap up. So I'm going to select a plane, so plane 3D. I'm going to make it a polymesh 3D, and I'm going to subdivide it a few times so that we have at least 1 million polygons. There we go. Hopefully 1 million is going to be enough. And I'm going to bring in a custom brush, a custom VDM brush called the concept kit, the cave concept kit. So this is, again, this comes with the advanced rock brushes pack that you can find. I'll show you a link at the end if you wanted to. I'm going to double click that. It's going to take a little while to load because it's loading VDMs. So this one is really cool because with a single click you can just click and drag and create a cave of geometry already. So that's all I wanted to create, and that's just a VDM. I'm going to undo that. This is another option, a slightly smaller cave that potentially could work better, more intricate. Yeah, I think that would work. And yeah, that's it. I'm just gonna copy this. Actually, let's delete lower and do a decimation. Let's decimate this to 250. This one should take a bit of time. Can you add some atmospheric effects in ZBrush? Yeah, you totally can. With the new NPR filters. Well, you could do it before NPR filters, but now with NPR filters, it's even better. I don't think we have time to show you that, but if we had, I will definitely. So 250. This is super accurate. I think this is the first time that I see this to be that accurate. So we use 250 points, and that's exactly what we got. This is amazing. That's great. All right. So I'm gonna copy this. Go to my environment. So you saw how fast we created this with the VDMs. Again, it doesn't have to be these brushes. I'm just saying that I just want to emphasize that it's not because of the brush necessarily, because that's something that I created for the pack, but it's for the feature is called the VDMs. So that allows you to create with a single click and drag a very intricate pattern. It's kind of like an alpha that has depth in XYZ. So super handy, like a displacement really. So I'm gonna paste this, and I'm going to scale it up because it's very tiny. Right, and this is what I'm gonna be placing here at the back. I think I need to flip the normals. No, actually, it's fine. I'm just gonna do that. And I'm gonna rotate this around a little bit. Maybe scale it in the Z axis. And from this angle, maybe with perspective already enabled, we can go ahead and maybe even increase the size of this a little bit. Just find something that could work, could be interesting. Maybe if we rotate it, we won't have to deal with too much of the depth. Okay, so I think that works. I'm gonna push it up so that we can see more of the floor. And of course, this geometry, you won't be able to use it in anything else. This is just purely a concept sculpt. But now that we have this as a single or individual mesh or subtool, we can very quickly go back to our brush. Where is it? So here's our brush again, and we can use the same brush that we created in last stream, and we can just basically click and drag to sort of cover some areas here. This is too much. So I'm just gonna use a few of these rocks to cover this gap. Maybe not all of it. I don't know. I'm just making decisions as I go. But that creates a nice gap in here. Maybe a few smaller brushes or smaller rocks. Alright, so that definitely looks a bit better, more integrated, I think. And you can see that it's kind of like a cave or something that the guy needs, like if this is a traveler or whatever it is, if you want to discover it, needs to go through it. And you can have a lot of fun just placing some contrasted lights, for example. So if I do another render, just to wrap up today's stream, and because this is as much as I'm going to do for this concept. The rest, if anything, after a render, I could do a kind of like a paint over. So I'm doing a quick save. And if you guys have any questions, of course, last minute questions, I'm happy to answer those. But let's go ahead and do a quick render. And see what happens. Cool. So we need to probably tweak the lighting a little bit more, the position of the lighting. But what I'm saying about like playing around with the lights and do a little bit of contrast and emphasis. So this is kind of like what I was looking for. These pockets of light. I found them really interesting. But then you have the cave in here. So something like that could look really cool. And if you have, for example, like a sunset that produces a very warm light, a very orange light, kind of like that golden hour as a main light, then you can play with a very contrasted and complementary color of the light inside the cave, kind of like a bluish color from that is being emitted by a crystal or something like that, and that helps to create emphasis in the area that you wanna draw the attention of the viewer. So that's it for today, guys, and that's it for this project as well. I'll take it later on if I have time through Keyshot just to do a render and finish the concept, but hopefully this gives you ideas of how to very quickly, once you know the steps, produce something that looks complex to the eye in ZBrush, and then finish it up later in Photoshop or any other software. Let's see. Any questions so far? How about you do a Keyshot live stream in your own Twitch channel? I'll be honest with you. Right now, it's very hard for me to get any extra time out of what I'm doing, because I'm currently with the extra mile, with the course that I released a couple of weeks ago, and the students have been doing a great job, and I'm just providing some support. So I'm doing the Keyshot and those sort of things, the streams for them. So it's very hard for me to get some time out of that. But if you go to the ZBrush Guides website, there are a few Keyshot related tutorials if you wanted to. In fact, the latest guide, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember. The latest one is just about Keyshot rendering for hard surface. So that you might find that useful, Mr. Sanson. Comics Legend looks like an entrance to a female cave. The internet might have ruined you, my friend. Cool. You're done. Yeah, I think I'm done with this one. Cool. Yeah. Like I said, I'm gonna bring this one into Keyshot. just do a quick light setup, and then I'll share it on the social media. So if you follow me in any of the social medias, like I said, they're here. I will post it there, and you can see the final result. But in terms of the workflows and what I wanted to show you, I think that's it. So thank you so much, guys, for joining in to the stream. I really have fun with this, in spite of all the technical issues that I sometimes face. So half of the stream today was just using the mouse, which is interesting. And yeah, by the way, if you guys want to have a look at it, I'm just going to show you, just provide some reference to the tools that I use in here in case you wanna get them. So in the ZBrush guides, you can just go to the resources. So someone asked about UIs. You can go to UIs and get those. In terms of brushes, there are some brushes that you can get that are free that do the same. To a degree, they do the same thing that we did with the custom brushes. And what else did we talk about? Alphas, tileable alphas. You can find them here as well. So UIs, you can have a bunch of UIs in here. So ZBrush UIs and ZBrush colors. ZBrush UI colors are just for fun. I think they're really, they're really cool. Like the fact that allows you to do this type of thing is really cool. So I just have a few here that you can try. This one is something that I did for a friend of mine that is not visually impaired, but his eyesight is not great. So the colors. So I just did a bit of research. Oops, I think I did the wrong thing. You have to right click and download it. But basically that color just creates a very high contrast, like yellow and black. So that, maybe, or if you're colorblind or something, that might help. Anyway, these are some of the UIs that we talked about, or that I talked about, that you can find here in the ZBrush guides. In terms of the brushes, you can click on this environment tab, and it will just send you to the environment brushes. So you see simple rock builder. So this is something very similar to the one that I used today. So you can just get it. All of these ones are free. So yeah, so you can get this one. You can get this one as well. This one is more like a cliff maker. So a bunch of these ones are very, very useful, and they do the same thing that I showed you today. If you want something more complex or just more variety, you can go to this pack. So below here, you can click Advanced Rock Brushes pack, and that will send you. I mean, not only rocks, you have a bunch of other stuff here that you can get. In case you are not familiar with ZBrush guides, this is the rock pack that I use, and this one comes with 70 odd brushes. I think more than that since the last update. And yeah, here you can see everything that comes with it, and those are the ones that I use. And in terms of alphas, also you can use environment alphas. So here, for example, anything that you can see here that is kind of like drawn to the edge in a way, those are tileable alphas. So let's say for rocks, we have a little bit of time. I can probably show you this one. So you can click on this alpha and then right click. I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save that here into my desktop. And Mr. Sanson, yeah. So the latest keyshot, the latest guide is about keyshot here. If you have a look at it. Anyway, so I could take this piece here, and I'm gonna go to this is just one final tip before I wrap up. So I can click Noisemaker, click Edit, and if I want to use a custom alpha that is tileable to generate all this pattern, all I have to do is click on the alpha on and off and select the alpha. And that way you can see this is the alpha loaded here. I'm just gonna reduce the noise plug and reduce. Why is not showing? Why it's not showing it? You should be able to turn off noise plug. Sorry. So with the noise plug off, then you can use the alpha. So there we go. Those are rocks. You can click OK, and you know, with a bit of a tweaking, you can create something that is very complex just with that. So there you go. You can use tileable alphas. So I think that covers pretty much everything that we did in this stream. Nukfunu, how do you prefer to use them? Drag rect? I missed the stream. Sorry, I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure what you mean. The alphas or the VDMs. This is gonna be available probably next week, so you can just rewatch it. But I also use the insert brushes in the past stream, which is already available. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to let you know. I think next week, same day, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, same day, same time. If anything, I'll let you know. But yep, in the meantime, enjoy your week, and I'll see you later. For those of you who are part of my email list, the email that I'm going to send today will come out a little bit later today. The weekly tips that I give you. So just keep an eye on your email, and I'll send you some tips today that I'm preparing. All right, cool, guys.